Good evening. This is CTV News from Monday, February 29th. I'm Patricia Vallone.
And I'm Sonia Shrivastava. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Well, a man is in the hospital and suspects are on the loose after a shooting this morning just up the road from two Prince George's County schools. Duval High and Goddard Middle School were put on lockdown while police collected evidence on Greenbelt Road where the incident took place. Now, police say they were called to the area and found the victim suffering from gunshot wounds. He was rushed to the hospital. A witness tells CTV News that he heard the entire incident and believes the shooting may have been because the suspect wanted the victim's name brand jacket.
I stand up there at the doctor's office and I heard a gunshot ring out. It hit the guardrail. All of a sudden I see the young man, he coming across the street over to the guardrail and he fell to the ground. Then I heard two more shots. And that's when he fell to the ground. But I seen the gentleman, they ran behind the doctor's office. I don't know who they was. I didn't really get a good glimpse at it because as soon as I heard the gunshots, I was kind of like ducking down. So all I seen was them gentlemen run behind the doctor's office.
Officers are looking for up to two suspects. Goddard Middle School and Duval High School are on lockdown as a precaution. The shooting did not happen at those schools, and it's just a precaution. Preliminarily, officers do not believe that this was a random shooting.
Lieutenant Coleman also says that the motive behind the shooting is still being investigated, and so far police don't have a description of any of the suspects, and they are asking anyone with information to give them a call. Meantime, the schools in the area will resume their normal routine on Tuesday.
Last year, the Maryland General Assembly passed legislation that gave those with certain criminal records a second chance at life. Those laws became effective on October 1st. Now lawmakers are trying to expand those measures. Last year, many who found themselves on Maryland's criminal database were able to shield or expunge their records from public view. It was all part of the Second Chance Act, a measure designed to give those who have served their time a new start. This General Assembly session, more than a dozen bills have been proposed to expand the law.
One of the things that we were encouraged by is that the Second Chance Act did pass, and it kind of nibbled at the periphery of some of the things we wanted to do for people who are trying to re-enter society or folks who had records 10, 15 years ago. And there are a couple of bills that would actually expunge your record as opposed to the second chance just shielding your record.
On March 8th, the House Judiciary Committee will take up 10 different measures dealing with expungement, a means that permanently clears a person's criminal record. The legislation includes expunging or shielding nonviolent felonies and certain misdemeanor records, erasing invalidated arrest warrants and police records, clearing marijuana possession records, and partial expungement of charges or convictions in a unit.
So what happens is many individuals go to court and they are charged with a number of offenses. Through a plea deal or through whatever means, they plead guilty and are found not guilty, or their charges are, the remaining charges are dropped. The way the current expungement law is written, if all of the charges within that unit of charges is not eligible for expungement, none of them are. And so you're finding individuals that are applying for jobs in the employer, they're not just looking at that guilty conviction, they're looking at all of those charges.
Other bills would shift the burden to the court system, requiring automatic expungement of certain records at no cost, repealing time constraints to remove non-prosecuted charges, and mandating a hearing if certain expungements are denied by the court.
You're finding that a lot of legislators are building off of the 2015 legislative session and acknowledging that, Marylanders are finding it very difficult to access employment with these records, and we have to figure out a way to expand access to expungement for them.
A task force is currently looking at the entire judiciary case search database to understand what actually lies in the public domain, and we'll have much more on that issue later this week.
Well, Freddie Gray's death has prompted lawmakers to put in more than 30 pieces of legislation this year in Annapolis, among them a bill that would require law enforcement officers to secure all prisoners with a seatbelt during transport. Now, something many feel could have saved Gray's life. Senator Joan Carter Conway, the sponsor of the bill, is also proposing a $10,000 fine if a prisoner is unsecured and ends up getting hurt or killed. A hearing on the bill is scheduled tomorrow in the Maryland Senate.
The issue of redistricting in Maryland takes center stage once again in Annapolis. This as the commission that was created by Governor Larry Hogan to study the issue releases its recommendations. The panel wants an independent group to be assigned to draw district lines. In addition, the commission is calling for more transparency in the process. The steps outlined by the group are included in bills that are being considered in both House and Senate committees.
The idea is to create election districts that make sense to the people. So one of the other things that they put in there is to keep together as much as possible communities, counties, municipalities, things like that, to make the districts as contiguous as possible instead of having them run all, spread all over the place, to make sure that they're essentially equal population. So if they have standards in place, if they're not taking into consideration the voting patterns, then what they'll do is come up with election districts that make sense.
The House Rules Committee is scheduled to hear the redistricting bill today. The legislation will be heard on the Senate side on Thursday.